You are listening to Latinx America, a podcast focused on highlighting catalysts who are using, leveraging, or creating technology to help our community achieve more. With your host, Adriana Flores Ragade. Manuel, thank you for joining us at Latinx America today. It's a pleasure to have you and to learn about what you're doing, not only as an entrepreneur and innovator, strategist, and also as a professor. You're doing a lot in terms of preparing the next generation of Latinx. Why don't we start with your journey? How did you become interested in technology and innovation, and what prompted you to become what you are today?
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much for having me here. I'm really excited to be on your podcast. I kind of joke that we teach what we need to learn, and really, I got to where I am today through an inquiry that comes from heartbreak, from a deep heartbreak that occurs when you live in a world so beautiful, such as this one, when people are so wonderful, and yet, there is a lot of things that are not working out for us. We're facing environmental crisis. We're facing all kinds of social problems. And from that heartbreak came a process of inquiry. And I founded a number of nonprofit organizations, and I tried a lot of things and reinvented myself in numerous ways. And I ended up starting an organization to share with others what I had learned along the way. It's called Kumu. It's an organization that supports world changers like myself, like you, like many Latinx today. Um, and that's so for free. And in order to support it and make it a thriving organization, I started a business, consulting organization called Kumu Thrive. And along the way, I started sharing more and more with others the kind of the insights and methodologies. And that's how I became a teacher for social entrepreneurship at UC Berkeley and at other business schools internationally.
Did you always have an interest in technology, though? Because tech and innovation are kind of driving change nowadays. And in your role as a professor, teaching the next gen, what are you seeing in terms of the next set of technologists that are going to emerge from our community? Are you seeing a lot of diversity in some of your classes? Are you seeing interesting stories? Are you, as you work with the companies that you consult for through Kumu Thrive, are you seeing a change? Are we pushing the needle in some way or change? Yeah.
Well, the more I am around technology and emerging technologies, which I like to call outer technologies that are out there in the world, the more interest I get into the inner technologies. That is the kind of abilities and skills and wisdom, individual and collective wisdom that we need to bring forth in order to co-create a wise society that nurtures life and that supports all of its members. So for me, a lot of the journey is not so much to put a focus on the technologies that are coming out there, but in how we're going to use them. Because technology cuts both ways, whether it's synthetic biology or nanotechnology or artificial intelligence or whatever it is going to be used to destroy, it's going to be used to kill, it's going to be used to drive further conflict and inequality. But we also have the opportunity to use it for the opposite. So, and that's why my interest in social entrepreneurship is big, because it's not enough to use technology and build a business around. You need a model of social and environmental impact that brings lasting benefit to, I would say, to all sentient beings on this planet.
So, first, can you define social entrepreneurship? And then, how does one build that model?
Right. Well, there's many definitions of social entrepreneurship, and none of the ones that I found out there I liked, because many of them are negative, meaning they define social entrepreneurship as using business to fix things or to solve problems. And I rather define it in a positive way is how do we use business to do what? What is it that we want that we're trying to create? So I ended up coining my own definition, which is for me, social entrepreneurship is the art of using business to co-create a just, abundant, and life nurturing world. And I say art because it's not certainly not a science. It requires a lot of self knowledge, a lot of multidimensional skills, and I say co-create as well because it's something we need to do together.
It's interesting what you mentioned in terms of creating a model and the impact that emerging technologies y- will have, because we often think of tech for good, or we focus on the great things that innovation is bringing forward. But there are, especially for our communities of color, there are some challenges that we're facing, with certain government agencies using technology to track our community, to I guess in a questionable ethical way, right? So how does one kind of define the model? If I'm thinking about, if I'm one of your clients,
Mm,
what should I be thinking about?
right. Well, we would need to create a model of impact, understand what is it that your business can do that is aligned with, I would say, the ethos of the company, the founding pillars of that company, and that technology. It's not about slapping together a business and let's do something good. Like, we see, for instance, these businesses that are starting a bottle, like Starbucks has ethos water, a bottled water that supposedly does something good, but bottled water is not that great for communities and it creates plastic pollution and it has a huge markup. So it's about being integrative and thinking 360 degrees in how we're impacting communities where we're sourcing our raw materials, if there's any sourcing of materials, how we're treating our own team, how we're treating our families. It's a whole integrative way of showing up in the world. And that's kind of why it becomes such a transformative journey to bring this very high road to business. And is beautiful, is challenging, but it's transformative and definitely full of opportunities. In fact, impact investment is the kind of investment that is growing the fastest in the United States. So there's more and more investors, there's more and more entrepreneurs, there's more and more people who are redefining success, right? Success is defined by the standards of others, and we're looking for fulfillment, which is defined by ourselves. How do we want to show up in the world, and what kind of fulfilling, enriching, and life nurturing experience do we want to create and leave behind to other generations?
That makes sense. I interviewed Marcia Chong Rosado. It was one of the first episodes that we had, and she works for Village Capital, and they were doing impact investing. And just most recently, last week, we released the episode with Yomaira Herrera, who
Mm.
is also doing some kind of impact investing because she's with Emerson Collective, and they have an arm that is doing this type of investment in education technology and other issues that they care about. Have you seen models that specifically work or would appeal to this impact VCs or investment companies?
There is lots of models in every single sector of the economy. We find examples of visionary businesses from food and water to high tech that are trying to have a positive impact in the world. They are changing a little bit of the narrative of the story of how business is done. Right, we are moving from individual experiences to collective experiences. We're moving from vertical models to horizontal models, from competitive models to collaborative models. So, in brands are becoming more of movements around values. There's amazing statistics that show, for instance, that the new generations in the world, like 70% worldwide, that's an average worldwide, 70% of people would prefer to work for socially responsible companies. So it's happening at every level. It's not only capital that is supporting this, but also especially the younger generations. And when you look at the distribution per region, I don't have statistics for Latinx in the United States, but definitely in the Latin American countries, the percentages of people who are willing to pay more for a socially and environmentally driven products, who are willing to relinquish pay to work for socially environmentally driven company, etc., are even higher than in the United States. So I think it's in our DNA as Latinx to think of community, to try and give back to others. And the challenge is to learn from these powerful business tools that surround us here in the United States and take the best of that world without relinquishing our values.
And as you mentioned, social entrepreneurship is about values, but let's talk skill set. So,
Mhm.
how does one acquire the skills to get to either a position such as the one that you're currently in, where you've started nonprofits, you have a for-profit strategy arm, you're teaching, you're doing a lot of different things right now. How does one do that?
Well, that's a really multifaceted and complex question to answer. I mean, being successful at business is already very difficult, but when you add the well-being or of all the sentient beings and future generations and having integral benefit in multiple ways, it gets really really difficult. And so I would start by just being able to first accept that if you want to transform the world around you, you need to transform yourself as an entrepreneur and become a very mindful, self-observing and reflective person that brings well-being and balance into everything they do. The way I work with entrepreneurs is I use different archetypal models to talk about skill sets. For instance, I talk about power animals. What medicine from which power, which is a tradition of Native Americans, which power animals that can help a social entrepreneur. And from that we start a conversation. For instance, I illustrate one of the animals. One of my favorite ones is the crouching tiger, which is a tiger doesn't run and attack. A tiger crouches and sits back and goes back a little bit, and with his paws is feeling the ground for solidity, and with his eyes is looking for his goal, and he's taking that time to really understand what the goals are. That's the crouching tiger medicine. Then there'll be times where you need to do the ant medicine. Ants take a watermelon and put it down a tiny ant hole. How? By working with lots of other people and breaking up very complex tasks into small ones, or the eagle that has the big perspective. So I use a lot of archetypes to try and explain people what the skill sets should be. And in my quest for other models that are non-traditional, that would explain what are the virtues that they should have, I bumped into, for instance, the 12 Lakota virtues, which are humility, perseverance, respect, honor, love, sacrifice, truth, compassion, bravery, fortitude, generosity, and wisdom. So there are many levels and many models and many archetypes that we can use, but it's very demanding and it's very integrative. And if you're not willing to change yourself and observe yourself, it's not going to work out.
Okay, thank you, Manuel. So let's go back to your personal story. What was your journey like into entrepreneurship? You're from Spain, so how did you join this tech world? Were you involved in Spain in the tech and innovation space? And you were also at the Latinx and Tech event, right? So what was your role there, and what did you think about that?
Okay, so my personal story is one of self discovery journey. I ended up in the United States. I had no previous experience in technology. I ended up living near Silicon Valley, and after trying out different business ventures, I ended up participating in the kind of the startup ecosystem there. It didn't work out that great. I'm one of those who didn't like make it in if we accept a success, by those standards of getting funded. So I ended up in that tech world of startups, and I learned a great deal. And I said to myself, wow, these are powerful tools: lean entrepreneurship and design thinking and value proposition design and canvassing, etc., etc. And I had a master's degree in economics and business, but none of these had been taught to me before. I also had a law degree, but I had very little practical knowledge of what it takes to start an organization. So that's when I said, well, this is something maybe I can do. I can start my own. And I did start some organizations. I started one called Nuestra Voz, which was helping Latinx to use technology and participate actively in the online conversation. This is back in the day when blogging was starting and when Twitter started. So we would do free trainings for activists and for journalists. And it was an amazing experience. We ended up having in our trainings senior journalists that had 20 years of experience and worked for, Wall Street Journal and other organizations coming to our free trainings because they wanted to know how to use social media. Of course, this is not a need anymore. Most people know how to use it and produce content very quickly and nimbly. But at the time, it was important. I started that organization. I started also another one that has grown quite a bit. It's called Plastic Pollution Coalition. And it was one of the first organizations to look at the emerging problem of plastics. That was a powerful experience. I was involved also in making a documentary film with an artist called Chris Jordan, this about the seabirds that eat plastic in the ocean. So I really just followed my heart and I dove headfirst into things that seem meaningful around me. And from that journey, I learned a lot. And I also learned that a lot of the gift is not about acquiring certain skills and then trying to give them to others, but about creating communities of learning because we all have pieces of this learning, creating communities of sharing. So that's how I present myself to my students still today, not as a teacher, but as a curator or facilitator of a community of peer to peer, lifelong transformational learning.
And even though you mentioned that you fail as an entrepreneur, I would beg to differ because as you mentioned, you learned from all of the different experiences that you had, and now you've launched a nonprofit, you have your strategy consulting, you are teaching, you're doing a lot of different, you have a lot of different roles, but your skill set and the experiences that you acquired along the way kind of helped you get to where you are.
Oh, absolutely. I don't see that I failed. I was being kind of sarcastic because Silicon Valley thinks that has a standard of failure or success, which is very, very narrow-minded and specific. Is your company receiving a lot of investing and increasing its valuation and eventually being sold or going public? And that's kind of that unicorn exponential growth view that is really narrow-minded and available to only a few. So part of the journey has been also to liberate myself from and liberate others around me, my students, from those standards that are kind of twisted and wicked and not really serve us and really don't serve the planet.
So it's a more holistic approach and defining success differently. So Manuel, tell us a little bit about resources that you recommend, whether it's books, podcasts, people that you follow that you think would be good models for those listening.
Uh, well, social entrepreneurship is more of a practice, and theory is not going to help a great deal. I mean, you can go online and look on YouTube or look on Amazon, find books or find short texts, reports about what it is, and different authors have different views. But ultimately, if you're interested in this, the way to get started is to connect with other people who are doing it. So I would say research in your community what social businesses are out there that are bringing in revenue while having a social impact and go talk to them. Also, research what kind of co-working spaces, incubators, and other organizations are around you. There's meetup groups for social entrepreneurship. There is co-working spaces like the Impact Hub and others. There's organizations such as Ashoka that has, newsletters, and try and connect with whatever is relevant to you. And also ask yourself, what breaks your heart? What is it that fundamentally breaks your heart? Could be the demise of our environment. It could be when there's forest fires like we're experiencing now. It could be poverty. It could be gender violence. It could be hate, racism. And follow your heartbreak. Follow your heartbeat and connect with others who are building businesses, having an impact in that area. Because it's such a demanding work that unless you're fueled by strong passion, you won't be able to succeed. And maybe that's not very specific. I know it's like, go to this website, but I'm being honest. There's not like a place where you could say, well, this is where you get started. It's talking to the community and connecting with others will get you started.
And else, I think it speaks to what you're passionate about. So if that heartbreak leads you to be passionate about social justice or equity in education or whatever it is, finding those resources, finding that community, as you mentioned, is really important. Speaking of community, Manuel, where do people in the social entrepreneurship world meet? And are there companies? Because I've been going to different conferences. I was at the Box conference, I was at the Page Duty conference, and the TechCrunch conference, and I'm seeing more and more people that are consider social entrepreneurs, or even, I guess, a lot more social impact teams within companies. Are there some companies that you follow, that you think are doing some things that are really good in this space?
Yeah, I mean, I am more connected maybe with the startup part of this. I, for instance, was an ambassador for an international contest on social entrepreneurship called The Venture. They gave $1 million to the best social entrepreneurship initiative every year. Ashoka has a fellowship program and a lot of excellent resources. Is the Media Network and Skull Foundation and many others that are giving money and they're creating spaces for people to come with ideas. And even if we don't like the competitive aspect, still these contests and these accelerators and incubators and big social entrepreneurship initiatives are a very good to gauge the temperature of this community and a really good place to connect with fellow social entrepreneurs and even join the teams if we see an amazing one. And it's true that established businesses, some of them are kind of growing their models of impact, and some are actually transitioning from being, we could say, from being regular enterprise that has some kind of corporate social responsibility to a social business, right? We see Patagonia, for instance, getting more and more bold with what they're trying to do. And we see a lot of organizations in the food space, taking organic and fair trade and, restorative agricultural practices to the next level and getting more and more bold. So it's happening as well that companies that maybe didn't set out to be per se social enterprises are making the turnaround and are more boldly describing themselves as social impact or environmental impact or both organizations.
Thanks, Manuel. And I know that we have this connection because we were both at the Latinx and Tech event hosted by the Capor Center. What was your experience as an attendee, and what kind of takeaways, especially in your role, did anything kind of open your eyes and or excite you about the future of Latinx in this space?
Uh-huh. Yeah, definitely. For me, it was renewed validation that in the DNA of Latinx people is community and peer support. That was everywhere. And it was also refreshing to see and to hear the amount of vulnerability that a lot of these tech leaders can have in regarding how difficult it is sometimes to be Latinx in a world such as tech, where until now they were a minority, like really a minority. There's big cohorts of Latinx coming into tech, but they're finding challenges. So for me, what was wonderful about this conference is that it was not a conference to consume content, to go and listen to some lectures, but it was a place to build community and to have conversations about what we need as Latinx to be together and move forward together and bring our gifts to the world.
That makes sense. And the great thing is that they're continuing to build community. And I recently got the link to join the online Latinx and tech community that Josh Torres sent. So I'm just excited about what's to come and how stronger we can get as a community. Well, I'm gonna ask our last question. What's your next play? You're in doing social entrepreneurship right now. What's in the horizon for you?
hmm Well, it's a very personal endeavor, and is I am writing a book, and at the same time, I became a father of twin identical boys, which are 18 months old now. So finding the time to write my book and bring this book forward, it's called The Meaning Economy, is definitely one of the things that is the next frontier for me, so that I can share more widely some of the things I'm learning and unlearning, because there's a lot of unlearning that is happening. So that's one. And I am also taking more of my teachings online, trying to make them available to more and more people. So that's one of the things I'm excited about, being to scale the teaching of social entrepreneurship. Well, teaching, again, curating communities of learning around social entrepreneurship, take it online, make it available to more and more people, and build community that way.
Well, once you have the online course, please let me know and I'll be able to share it with our listeners as a follow up to this conversation. I thank you for reaching out and I thank you for sharing your wisdom on the social entrepreneurship or this evolving field. And if someone wants to reach you, how do they get a hold of you?
Well, through my email is at kumu dot cc. It's a good way to reach me. You can also just visit a website, which is kumu dot cc, and sign up for the newsletter there. Those are good ways to get a hold of me. And those who have maybe a business and are interested more in those business services, they can go to Kumu Thrive, KUMU Thrive.com, and reach me and my team that way as well.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Manuel. And I cannot congratulate you more for your twin boys. Parenthood is amazing. I have a 6 year old and a 9 year old. And I remember those sleepless nights when I think I had some of my best thinking that happened when I had when I lacked sleep. But good luck to you and your partner on raising your family and on the book. So I look forward to continuing our conversation. And thank you again.
Thank you so much. A pleasure talking to you today.
Thanks for joining us today. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook at Latinx America and on Twitter at America Latinx, or email any questions or ideas to latinxamerica@gmail.com. Gracias y hasta la próxima semana.